Good evening, I'm Kevin Christopher.
And I'm Nancy Cox. Thank you for joining us at 6. Before the big story tonight, we want to tell you about some developing news out of Knox County concerning a deadly gas station robbery. 24-year-old Philip Lee Lewis was taken into custody in Flint, Michigan, just before 4 this afternoon. Police say he's the man who robbed the A&B Quick Stop in Gray, then shot and killed this customer, 25-year-old Gary Medlin, who was just trying to leave the store. Lewis faces murder and robbery charges. We'll have more on that. A popular Madison County restaurant remains open despite legal problems for its owner.
Michael Burke has today's developments about Marshawn Thomas and DeJuan Mack, who just happen to be the same person. It's the LEX 18 Big Story at 6.
Marshawn Thomas wants you to know something about him.
I'm not somebody that's here like a fugitive running from I done broke a lot of laws.
2 decades ago, however, he broke several laws in Chicago, served 10 years for burglary and kidnapping charges. Then he moved to Kentucky about 4 years ago.
And so I knew they wasn't going to let me transfer my probation to Kentucky, so I just left anyway. You know, I wanted to be with this woman. I was madly in love.
But Thomas believes it was that woman who tipped police to the one law he did break here in Kentucky, theft of identity. He assumed a friend's name, DeJuan Mack, just so he could work. And he worked hard, saving enough to open Taylor's Kentucky Sandwich Shack, which the locals here love.
It's fantastic. Love the food.
Quentin Jenkins is running the place while Thomas sits in jail just a block away.
He told me just keep it going like he's been going. He's on vacation right now, so he'll keep it going when he comes back.
But that's where it gets tricky. After he settles the identity theft charge here,
I'm willing to accept whatever consequences I got behind that.
There's still that other matter swirling around the Windy City.
Face whatever consequences I got behind this probation violation.
Then he can return as Marshawn Thomas. Turns out it's the same person everyone liked as DeJuan Mack.
Yeah, really good customer service, real nice guy. Seemed to have a good heart.
Covering the news in Madison County, Michael Burke, LEX 18 News.
Thomas is due back in court next week to begin facing that identity theft charge.
A Clark County mother faces criminal abuse charges after 2 of her 3 children tested positive for cocaine. Police say 31-year-old Anquita Wright was arrested yesterday after her 4-year-old overdosed on cocaine. The child wouldn't wake up at daycare, so workers called for help. Police say the child tested positive for cocaine, along with Wright's 2-year-old as well. Officers tell us the children ingested the drug here at her 3rd Street home. Here's what the 4-year-old told police.
The daughter had said that she had picked it up and put it in her milk. She thought it was a pill and drank it.
Wright declined to speak with us from jail. She told police the cocaine belonged to someone else who was staying at her home.
An Ohio man has been sentenced for hitting a flight attendant during a flight from Phoenix to Cleveland last year. It happened March 20th, and the flight had to be diverted to the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport. According to the Department of Justice, 24-year-old Donald Zuppo Jr. was sentenced to 31 days in custody, followed by 7 months of home detention. He was also ordered to pay restitution to the flight attendant and will be under supervision of the U.S. Probation Office for 2 years.
It has been a cold day today, a huge change from where we were yesterday. As we're looking out here with our St. Joseph Health weather bug camera, this is from Keeneland, looking across at the Bluegrass Airport there. It is a mainly clear sky. We've got some high thin clouds as we look toward the southern horizon. It is certainly going to be cold as we get your day started tomorrow. We're talking about overnight lows right around 10 as we look through the I-64 corridor, colder northern Kentucky. Mid-teens as we get to the south, a few more clouds will keep temperatures there from completely tanking. As we're looking at temperatures at the moment, well, they're starting their tanking process. We're in the upper 20s now. Lexington and Mount Sterling and Moorhead all at 28. Frankfort's at 29. Danville, Somerset at 30. London, Williamsburg each come in at even freezing. Jackson's in the upper 20s. You're talking wind chills that are hovering around 20. So bottom line, it's cold out there for you this evening. It is still February, so that's not totally out of the equation. As we're looking at your weekend, there are some changes coming. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Thank you, Bill.
People in Harlan County are still under a state of emergency after a mudslide shut down part of Highway 72, but the road has reopened.
State road crews worked into the night clearing the mud and debris. The road was down to 1 lane for the cleanup, but we're told the entire road is now back open. After 2 major floods in the last 10 years, the Liberty City Council in Casey County is looking at ways to stop that from happening again.
LEX 18's Catherine Collins tells us how business owners say they need a break.
It's up to here.
In 2010, John Rigney's restaurant, The Village, in Liberty, was forced to close for 30 days because of major flooding.
5.5 feet.
In 2015, they were hit again.
We had about 2 foot of water in here. Pretty devastating for a few days.
These pictures were taken then, and it wasn't just his restaurant. Many businesses along Wallace Wilkinson Boulevard were impacted too. But Rigney is hopeful, thanks to new discussions by the city council. Now the city is looking at several options of how it can stop the Green River from flooding and affecting so many. A report from the Army Corps of Engineers lays out several options: a flood wall, removing a bridge, adding culverts. The city's mayor says they'll have to determine costs before moving forward.
Every time it rains for more than a day, we're thinking, okay, what's next?
Quincy Burt with Galilean Home Ministries says their Trading Post store was closed for 9 weeks after the 2010 flood. He says any step towards a solution is for the best.
Well, that is very comforting to us to know that, hey, they're taking a look at this, they're taking it serious, because it's been a problem for a long time.
Covering the news in Casey County, Catherine Collins, LEX 18 News.
The City Council will discuss moving forward to determine the cost of each flood prevention plan at their meeting on Monday night at 5 p.m.
A Scott County man who brought a loaded gun wrapped in aluminum foil to the Bluegrass Airport has received probation and a fine in federal court. The Herald Leader reports 64-year-old David Upton tried checking the gun onto his flight back in October but was unsuccessful. He's now being ordered supervised probation and a $600 fine. No word why Upton was trying to check that gun. Last Election Day, voters said yes to giving crime victims more rights.
But now the question is, did they actually know what they were voting for? LEX 18's Carolina Buchek has more from the Capitol, where now the state Supreme Court is involved.
This entire issue comes from November's ballot, and now it is here at the Supreme Court, and this court will need to figure out if this 38-word question was too vague, and did voters actually know what they were voting on?
The criminal who tore your life apart is walking free.
This is one of the several ads for Marsy's Law that played before Election Day. The law itself gives crime victims the same rights as the defendant in the case. And on November 6th, 63% of voters in Kentucky chose to add this law to the state's constitution. This 555-word detailed document is the actual amendment they said yes to. But on the ballot, this is what they saw. Are you in favor of providing constitutional rights to victims of crime, including the right to be treated fairly, with dignity and respect, and the right to be informed and to have a voice in the judicial process?
This is what the voters saw.
And today, the justices wondered if this question was worded fairly.
If you ask the voters if they're for crime victims' rights, who other than a sociopath is going to answer any way but yes to that question?
The decision is now up to the court, and it has big consequences because the majority of voters already said yes to Marsy's Law. Covering the news in Frankfurt from the LEX 18 Mobile Newsroom, back to you.
Lawyers arguing for Marsy's Law say the full amendment was available to any voter who looked it up before Election Day. Lawyers against it say this sets a dangerous precedent. Republican candidate D.J. Johnson has withdrawn his challenge of a close Kentucky State House race.
Democrat Jim Glenn defeated Johnson by 1 vote in Kentucky House District 13 on Election Day. But a legislative panel of 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats ordered a recount in the race at Johnson's request. Well, that recount ended in a tie. Johnson's lawyer argues that lawmakers had to pick a winner at random, which could include flipping a coin or drawing a name from a hat. But Glenn's lawyer said he had already taken office and would not accept the results of a coin flip. Well, Johnson then withdrew his election challenge, saying it was best for the people of his district to avoid a lengthy legal battle. Plans for a railroad museum in Estill County are moving full steam ahead, with parts of the groundbreaking center slated to open to the public as soon as this summer.
And to celebrate the progress, one of the largest railroads in the country has provided a gift, reviving a piece of cherished history. Mike Valenti explains.
Once considered an eyesore, the 1969 Chesapeake and Ohio Railway caboose has made an eye-popping transformation. CSX Transportation unveiled the caboose this week in Huntington, West Virginia. before it starts its new chapter in Ravenna, Kentucky.
They basically took it down to bare metal and rebuilt it, and it's a stunning example of what can be done to restore pieces of historic equipment.
CSX employees restored the showpiece in less than a year, and it's figured to feature prominently in the future Kentucky Rail Heritage Center, soon to undergo its own radical transformation, from a former CSX rail yard to a community space with a music venue, restaurant, and a museum dedicated to the region's rich railroad history.
Everything that we display here is gonna be a testament to the heritage of the people that did what they did many years ago.
People like Jerry Rose's father, who worked for the railroad for 42 years. Rose is now working on the project's development.
Ravenna, of course, owes its very existence to the railroad. The railroad basically established Ravenna.
People who grew up here are eager to see history come to life and intrigued by what that means for the future of Ravenna.
This is a major milestone, I think, for the people and for this area.
Covering the news in Estill County, Mike Valenti, LEX 18 News.
That's going to be great.
What a great idea. And boy, did they do a job on that caboose.
They did. Huh? Still ahead, a heartbreaking trip to visit her dying father turned into a heartwarming chance encounter.
Up next at 6, watch how a Kentucky woman helped bring a baby into the world in a hospital parking garage.